Since I can't write very well with my arms and my hands and fingers, I'm recording this creepypasta idea so I can expand on it and take my time writing it. I think I would call it Daylight Allergy. That's just a random name off the top of my head. I might think about it later. But it starts off like this. Hey there, my name is Suzaki Jones. I'm half bred, or what they call mixed, part American, part Japanese. But I've only been raised in America, so I only know American culture. Um, as I was enjoying my time about 12 years ago, I was young, deciding if I wanted to stay in college or not. I went to a party. And at the party, I believe I got pretty drunk since most of that night's kind of a blur. I know I only talked to two guys before I was really drunk. So the outcome is one of those two guys, but I was too embarrassed to call him up and say, "Hey, I think I'm pregnant." And I didn't know until I was 2 or 3 months in, because when I had woke up that night or early in the morning to go to the bathroom, I was in my nightgown. I didn't remember how I got home, but I was in my bed at home. So I figured maybe somehow I got home and I went to sleep. Turns out maybe I slept with somebody somehow at my house. Don't know how I got there. And they had the decency to make sure I was at least in my nightgown or to dress me afterwards. I have no idea. All I know is that the outcome was I was birthed a baby girl, and I called her June, and her last name I decided to give my own last name, Jones. And well, while I was pregnant with her, closer to the last trimester, I began to have weird skin rashes, and turned out that when I went outside, I noticed that they would blister. They would not just be red, but they would blister. Um, One time I woke up late and I was by the window, and I noticed that a stinging had woke me up, and in that stinging area it was red, but it had also blistered. And that was the first time. It was about a month before I gave birth. Well, turns out after I gave birth, the doctor had told me, well, sometimes it's indicative of an allergy that the child might have. I don't know how true that is, but I took precautions, and when I was on my way home, I made sure to cover my baby. I had birthed her. I was in labor during the day, so I had her at night. She was birthed at night. I still covered her up because I didn't know if it was environmental allergy or if it was truly the sun. They told me it's possible to be allergic to sunlight. I don't know how possible that is. I've heard of it, but I've never known anyone, not personally. Um, what I did was the next day when we when it was time for me to feed her, I tested myself first. I put out my hand in the sunlight, and sure enough, I didn't have a reaction for the first time in 2 months. There was no redness, no stinging, no blistering. Then I know you're probably gonna think I'm a horrible mother, but I had to see. So I took my baby's foot that was closest to the sunlight while I was breastfeeding her, and I just eased it into the sunlight, and I began to see it turn red immediately. Baby began to cry. Took her foot out of the sunlight. I was like, oh my lord, what do you do when a baby and soon to be child is going to have sunlight allergies? What am I going to do? So, skip ahead after doing some real research. Hey there. My mom told you a little bit about my sunlight allergy and a little bit about what she can remember about the night that she conceived me. Well, I'm 16 now. She told you only up to about the time I was 12. Not all of it, just skim through some of the major areas of some of the trauma that we had to go through. I could say the first time I noticed a change, I was either 7 or 8, and I had been playing. It was late evening, and I was playing in the shadows. It was almost night, about 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. I wasn't keeping track of time. I just know that the sun went down around that time, and I decided I would try to jump up and catch onto this branch off the side of the porch. Well, normally I don't have a problem catching that branch. It wasn't very high, but I was a short 8-year-old, 7 or 8, turning 8, somewhere in there. And when I missed the branch, I scraped my hand, or I should say, the side of my elbow, just where you can reach it if you looked at it closely. And I didn't have any bandages. I had on white, so I didn't want it to drip and stain my clothes. Mom knows I worked hard. She works hard on keeping me in clothes because I grow like the weed sometimes. So I just took my tongue and licked the scrape. It was just a scrape. It wasn't like it was gushing blood, but it dripped a little. And the next day, I was just hanging around with mom. Mom noticed my scrape, and I told her I tried to clean it up. She said licking it is not very sanitized way to take care of it. So she treated it like, most mothers treat the little scratches that you get. She wasn't happy I didn't tell her because she said anything little thing could get infected. You never know. She was always afraid that if something emergency happened, if she had to rush out in the daylight, what she would do, how things would go. I did most of my schooling at home, and of course, it was always easiest for me to pay attention during the night. So in the early mornings, I'd find myself falling asleep, and I would sleep heavy during the afternoon. So the doctors thought that I had narcolepsy or some type of weird insomnia. They went with narcolepsy because I would fall asleep during the day. But mom would tell them that I was up most of the night. I only slept very little, like when you take a nap during the day, maybe 3 hours tops. But I slept heavy during the day. So they said maybe it has something to do with the lack of sunlight. Well, I don't know if that makes sense when you're missing sunlight, but you sleep more during the day and you think your body would want more of it. And then again, maybe it's part of the allergy to sunlight. I don't know. All I know is she treated it. It seemed fine. It was recovering. And for some reason, one of the little girls in the neighborhood decided that they would come over the next day, later in the evening. Sun was still out, but it was still kind of, it was enough rays that it could be a problem for me. So she asked to play with me. I'm like, how does she Maybe I'm so strange that I'm the talk of the neighborhood. I don't know. But I decided, okay, Mom, I'll humor the outside world and play with this little girl. Well, come and find out, she might be the same age, but she was extremely clumsy. Made me seem like a cat compared to a dog. I mean, she would trip and fall so easy. We'd be running through the play area. She'd slide or slip on something. She did that 2 or 3 times in just a 3 hour period. She came over while it was still light. She went home. I think she left at 7:30. She only lived a couple houses away. But while she was playing, she slipped and fell. I didn't know she was really hurt. The horrible thing was it was still light and she was in the middle of the sunlight. She was crying so horribly. I don't know how much she knew about my sun allergy because when you're young, you don't really understand when people tell you things, or some of us don't. So I didn't want to leave her there crying. Mom was on the other side of the house. She really didn't hear her, and I didn't want to just leave and look like a jerk just to go get Mom, and I didn't know how long it would take me to get back. But what if she had like a broken arm or she sprained her ankle? So I darted over there and I grabbed her and I dragged her to the edge of the sunlight as fast as I could. Mind you, she might be the same age, but she's a little heavier than I am. And it took me just a bit to get her out. I was like, any minute now, I might start having a reaction. But nothing happened. I know it wasn't that long, and all my life I've been told I had sunlight allergy, and all Mom could tell me about that was the one time that for some reason she decided to see if her baby foot would turn red in the sun. I said, well, if it was me, I'd want proof. I mean, how do you face the idea of someone having a sun allergy? And then I said, maybe I grew out of it. I'm turning 8. And some kids go through the preteens early. I don't know what puberty really looks like because I don't really see the other girls. But I heard some people start at 8. They don't actually start their periods, but they start showing signs of puberty. And they might start the cycle anywhere between 9 to 12 years old. So the next day, I decided to try it again. I eased my hand into the sunlight, just a small portion of it, and wouldn't know it. It stung so bad and turned red right away. I don't know how fast it would take it before it blistered, but it hurt. And I didn't understand. It happened so fast. Why didn't it happen yesterday? What was the difference? I couldn't figure it out. It took me all that week to figure it out. The little girl came over, as clumsy as usual. This time she scraped her knee. She fell on one of the toys on her knee, scraped her knee, a little bit worse than I scraped my elbow. So I didn't want to leave her to go always to the bathroom with it bleeding. And I didn't want it to get all over the rug because it was one of those kind of cream colored rugs, so it's really light. So I took my hand and I wiped her cut. And then I ran to the bathroom to get something. But all of the medicine for the scraping stuff was in my mom's bathroom in the master bedroom. My bathroom only had band-aids. It didn't have like the cleaning stuff and all that. I guess it was child safety. So I was like, I know Mom told me not to. I washed my hands, washed the blood off. But then I grabbed the band-aid and I decided, what the heck? You know, my my cut turned out okay, even though Mom found out about 12 hours later. So I just did the same thing. I told her, hold still, I'm going to clean the wound. I know it's weird, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So I decided I would dab her wound with my tongue. And I put the band-aid on it. Then I went and told Mom. Mom said, what I say? You're not supposed to lick the wounds. You can get them infected. Your tongue is not the cleanest thing on your body. Or in your body. However that goes. So then she took the little girl's band-aid back off. And she cleaned it with the stuff she had. The little girl was still crying. I didn't know what the big deal was. It was just a scrape. She was staring at me weird though. And I said, what? And she said, do you always lick your cuts? I said, I don't know. I've only had one. She looked at me strangely again. She said, I'm always getting cuts. I said, well, do you lick yours? She says, only when they're on my finger or my hand. I can't lick them off my knee. I said, well, I'm not you, so I can reach it with. But isn't it the same thing? Well, I've never licked anybody else's, only my own. I had to think about that. Well, if I thought it was safe to lick my own, it should be safe to lick someone else's. I said, oh, well, I don't know. I guess I'll avoid that if it's a problem. Well, not really. I mean, it seems like whenever you lick your cut, that it hurts less. I don't know if it's just in our head, but she said, well, it didn't hurt. It seemed like it helped. In my head, it seemed like when I licked my elbow, that it seemed to help. Well, she decided she'd come over again. This time I cleaned the room so she wouldn't trip on any toys and hurt herself. I never seen somebody so clumsy. But Mom says that some girls going through puberty, or as they're hitting their growth spurts, are a little clumsier than others. I was just lucky that I had cat-like reflexes most of the time. Apparently, not after a certain time in the night. Of course, that might have been just a freak chance of missing that branch. I mean, how many times can you jump to try to catch onto a branch of a tree and not miss? So eventually, I'm bound to fall. And she said, you never really, hardly ever had scrapes or cuts. It was like, I almost started wondering if you were normal. Well, Mom, I'm allergic to sunlight, so obviously I'm not normal. Well, I don't mean that. I mean, like, could you actually get a cut? Mom, you're not thinking about those horror movie things. Silly stuff about vampires and crap. Come on. Well, sometimes a person's imagination runs away with them. Well, the next day, I decided to see if it would happen again. Except for this time, I blatantly stuck my arm into the sunlight. The little girl came over and we played, and she asked me why I was always inside. And I told her. She goes, I don't think so, because when you got me out of the sunlight the other day, nothing happened. I said, yeah, but the next day something happened. Well, try it again. Maybe you just had something on your skin and it reacted with the sun. Like what? I mean, all the chemicals are down at Mom's house. Well, just try it. So I stuck my arm out, blatantly, willfully. This time nothing happened. And my wheels got to spinning and my gears got to turning real fast. And I began to get a little spooked myself. The only difference between that whole week and all the rest of the week, when I tried to figure it out, was there's a 2 day gap between each day. The first day I got hurt. The second day, the little girl got hurt. It's 2 day gap. In the middle of that gap, I didn't have any scrapes to lick. That's the only thing different out of the whole day or 3 days. So I decided I wouldn't invite the little girl over the next day because I wanted to try something and I didn't want her to freak out and me to freak out and mom to freak out and everybody to freak out. And I surely didn't want to explain this to somebody that wasn't part of the situation in the first place. That little girl that somehow knew I was here and decided to come play with me. Well, the next day, it'd been a whole day since I licked the little girl's scrape. And I tried it this time. I did just like that yesterday, but this time it turned red all the way up to the point where the sun touched. And I had wished that I had slowly tried it this time because I had this big red burn from my hand all the way to my elbow. And I had to tell mom, I tried it, mom. I didn't burn one day, and I wanted to see what would happen. And she said, I told you had a sun allergy. Why would you do that? When she fell the other day, after I scraped my arm, nothing happened. And then the day after, she scraped her knee. And I told you, I licked her knee. We put a band-aid on it. Nothing happened the next day. But in between those days, I burnt. I saw this weird expression come across mom's face. And I didn't know if it was curiosity, horror, or her trying to keep a straight face. But I know that that was not the face of understanding, like, oh, it's okay, I understand you're trying to be funny and use your imagination. It was a face of something I don't want to face. Might be true. I mean, that's a face you don't see on your parents' face. Except for when you first get your first cold or your first chicken pox, which, strangely, I never got chicken pox. I got a cold, but I never got chicken pox. I guess because I wasn't exposed to kids that had chicken pox. Anyways, back to the subject. The face she made when she found out I had my first cold, and it was a really bad cold. Turns out your colds are worse when you don't get enough vitamin B. D is in dog. And turns out that you need the sun to help you produce vitamin D, and I don't get enough of that. So they put me on vitamin D pills, vitamins, so that I could get the vitamin D I needed. And I didn't get a cold after that. It's been over, I got that cold when I was about 3 years old. And I'm turning 8 now, so it's been 5 years since I had a cold of any type. And I not got sick otherwise. And that's that face I remember on mom's face when she realized my fever was going up and she was frantic that something bad was going to happen. It was almost that look, like I'm trying not to panic. I'm trying not to put panic on my face so my little girl doesn't cry and she doesn't get scared. That's what I saw. That look. When you know that the adults are trying to be brave and put on a brave face, but they're scared. And their eyes are showing fear while their face are trying to remain stone. Which kind of gives it away because when they're used to smiling or when they're expressive and all of a sudden they're not using expression, that kind of gives it away. I said, Mom, what are you thinking? She said, well, I just think it's strange. Okay, Mom, but you obviously have made some other conclusion because your face just spoke volumes. You were trying not to use expressions. and you're a very expressive person. Well, you don't always expect your children to recognize that, or you know, most kids aren't tracking what everybody else is doing, unless it's unavoidably noticeable. You're thinking vampire stuff, aren't you, Mom? I remember that one time you joked about that. Well, well, as horrible as it sounds, and as miserable as it's already been to be allergic to sunlight, it'd probably be better if I was the situation. Because then, no, that wouldn't be good, because vampires can't handle the sunlight. Well, what's the difference in what I'm doing now? Well, vampires have to have blood to live. You haven't had to have blood to live. Not that we know of. What do you mean? Well, when I was in the womb for 9 months, had to have blood through my system. Well, I didn't feed you blood. It's not like you actually got cuts and you got fed. You got blood some weird way. But maybe that's what I've been missing, because I had sunburn on the days that I didn't. Okay, I'm not having this discussion. Mom was trying very hard not to get frantic. I'm not having this discussion. I'm gonna make your dinner. We're gonna have a nice, peaceful evening. We're gonna do what we usually do. I'm gonna put on your book for you to listen. I like a lot of fairy tale stuff, a lot of sci-fi stuff, not a lot of vampire stuff. I almost hated vampire stuff, considering I had sun allergies. I didn't care for the werewolf stuff. I thought lame. People turn into beasts, really? I mean, there's enough killing without people turning to beasts and being killers. So I thought those were stupid stories. So I did what she asked. We had our dinner. It was quite quiet. It was almost a weird, strange distance feeling. But I figured maybe she just needed to sleep, and things would be back to normal in the morning. Well, I knew it was nearing that time, would be 24 hours that I hadn't had any blood. And I really was getting to a point where I was tired of always being inside, all night, all day, inside. Rare situations, only at certain times of the day I could go outside, and it was usually not really daytime, it was practically nighttime, and I had to stay in the shadows. I mean, when the sun's almost gone, you're not really enjoying sunlight. And even then, I still had to keep my arms and legs covered. So that's no fun. Always wearing sweatpants, jackets when you go outside, long sleeves and shirts, bundled up all the way. I mean, that does look strange, which I could already see why Mom would have already let me be playing outside at certain times of the evening, close to nighttime or at night, having to be with me at night, having to have a job so that she could be home most of the time and work with me at school, so I would never get behind. Now, I was turning 8. And it was either that I was going through puberty and growing out of this allergy, or the blood had something to do with the fact that I didn't get burnt. But why would it be that way? Because even vampires, whether they drink blood or not, they can't be in the sunlight. Or at least most vampires, the typical vampires. So why would that mean that I could be in the light? Was there something in the composition of blood? Well, so that wouldn't make sense, because even my own blood keeps me from having that problem. And if it was just me and I have a problem, then my blood shouldn't help. So why would my blood? Of course, then again, who says that my blood's all that different? Maybe something else is different about me. I get my nutrients just like anyone else, as far as I can tell, and I have for years. So why would blood matter? I can't figure this out. It doesn't make sense to me. But I'm just a kid. I might be a smart kid, but I'm just a kid. So I decided I would try it again. This time I would take a pin and I poked my finger. I didn't want to wait for the whole 24 hours. I just wanted to prove it. So I poked my finger. I just stuck the tip of my finger in my mouth. And I stuck that same hand in the sunlight. Nothing happened. I said, Mom, I'm with your mom. I have to tell Mom. I mean, who else do I have in my world but my mom? And the clumsy little girl. I wouldn't tell anybody else. I mean, it doesn't make sense to tell somebody about your weirdness, even if they understand sunlight's allergy. She really doesn't, or she wouldn't ask me to have tested it the other day. So I told Mom, Mom, it's got to be a proven fact. I don't really believe in vampires, but what else could it be? I stuck my finger with a pin. You did what? I stuck my finger with a pin. Just let me finish. And I put my hand in the sunlight, and it didn't burn because I licked the tip of my finger that had a blood prick on it. But why would that? If you have a sun allergy, why would your blood help? I mean, it would make sense if it was someone else's blood because they don't have sun allergies. At least we don't think so. I mean, that's a rare condition. So why would blood help? It doesn't make sense. But sure enough, I'm 16 years old now. And I went through school, normal school, in the daytime. Well, okay, not completely normal. They had evening classes for special students that had parents that had to work at a certain time of day. And so I went to those classes. But I was still out in the daytime and part of the day. I never had to hide from the sun again. As long as I was awake, I would play in the sun. It was like I missed an old friend. And I had been separated for too long. And how I managed it was if some other kid was on the playground and they get hurt, I'd be happy to help. Normally it was their arm or hand or something above the knee. So it wasn't too weird. But every chance that I got, I would take advantage of collecting some blood somehow. It wasn't like I craved it, but it was more like a medicine. You know you have to have it, so you take it. Because if you don't, the outcome is worse. So I didn't consider myself a vampire, as much as it sounded a lot like it. But at the same time, I could be in a light. So I don't know any vampire stories where they don't have to have blood to live, and they can be in a light. I don't know any like that. So I figured it just has to do with the sun allergy. Maybe that's all we need is a little bit of something that's in the blood to help get over the burning sensation and the blistering symptoms that you get when you're out in the sun. Because boy, is it painful. I mean, I can't imagine a normal any kid that's just a normal kid. Like they don't care about learning stuff all the time, and they always have their nose in the book, and they just want to go out and play. How miserable they must have been. Well, here I am, 16, and believe it or not, I learned that if I hang around certain places, there's always blood to be had. Now, granted, there's always a chance that somebody's going to have a sickness in the blood. But the weird thing is, it's like I can smell when there's something not right. That freaks me out. Because I know that they talk about how vampires can smell the blood. They can tell sometimes if there's something wrong with the person, they won't drink it. Well, I could tell when someone's sick. One time, when I was 13 years old, I told this man, I said, something doesn't seem right. You might want to check it with your doctor. And he was like, what are you talking about? I said, haven't you noticed how weak you've been feeling, how fatigued you've been feeling? You might want to go to the doctor. So I was so adamant that he went to the doctor. They tested him. And that weakness he's been feeling, thinking it was just a lack of vitamins or maybe a sugar, Turned out he had cancer. He didn't just have cancer. He also had a STD that was affecting his liver. What did they call it? Um, Hepatitis. I don't remember if it was A or B. But he had hepatitis. I don't know how long he'd been like that, but I could smell it. He didn't smell right. He smelled rotten, completely rotten. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't just the hepatitis that made him smell rotten. I'm sure it was the cancer. So they told me you're so good at noticing stuff as I went through school. And of course, many times I would mention something to random people. People that I knew wouldn't be like completely cruel to me if I showed too much weirdness. And I would tell them, hey, you might want to go see the doctor. And I was so right so many times that people didn't even ask me any questions by the time I got to 11th grade. I'm about to turn 17. I'm 16. I'm in 11th grade. But I'm about to turn 17. It's only the first of the year. And now I'm kind of wondering, everybody's like, maybe you should be a doctor, or maybe you should be a nurse. What would happen if I had the option to be closer to blood? Would it give me a sick craving for it, or would I just be like I am now? It's just medicine. I don't know what to do. So I said, hey, maybe we could have some type of hands-on classes, like advanced college classes, where I could see if I want to be and work that type of job. Well, the first thing I did was I took advantage of the fact that when I had to help draw blood, I made sure just a little bit of it spilled, just a tiny bit. And when nobody was looking, I'd take just that tiny bit that spilled and I'd put my tongue to it. And it seemed like it only took a pinprick of a drop to keep me from having the sun allergy reactions. I began to think maybe this is the job for me. Maybe because I need it like a medicine, and because I'm good at telling when someone's sick. But I don't want to be a doctor because it's too much responsibility. I'll just stay a nurse. Maybe I could be like LPN, somebody that works with helping with drawing blood and medicines, but they're not as high up as maybe a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner. Yeah, I think this might be what I want to be when I grow up. And then maybe I won't have to worry about my mom thinking that I'm doing something else when I sneak out at night. Because I started doing that to go to the clinic. And I told them at the clinic I was studying, but I didn't want mom to know. I was trying to find ways to get a hold of blood without it being obvious. What do I do? I'm almost an adult, but I'm still at home, and I still have to hide that I've been taking blood because ever since that seen mom's reaction when I was a child, I didn't want to tell her. I'd still been putting blood in my mouth, and now it's other people's blood. I don't know if I feel any different. I don't. It's not like I drink their blood, so you can't really tell with a drop of blood. I mean, I guess it'd be like if you took a small pill, just enough to help you. You could tell that you don't have symptoms, but you don't really know if you feel all that better. Well, that's what the small amount of blood makes me feel like. I don't have to worry about the reaction to sun, but I don't notice it doing anything other than not having the sun allergy reactions. But what do I do? Like I say, turning 17. I still have a year of school to get through, and then I start college. I'm pretty sure after this experience in the last couple of months of hands-on college that I will probably be a nurse. How many nurses joke about being a vampire? Huh, that would fit me just fine, and they would never really think much about it. It'd be like being yourself, but you only have to have sunglasses on. That's all I could think of. I think that's the plan I'll go with. This concludes the end of that creepy pasta. And yes, it probably could become a series, but this is a good place to start. She's contemplating her future. She knows what helps her get over her sun allergy. And that's why I think I'll leave the name of this story Sun Allergies or Sun Allergy, because it'll be interesting just in the name and make people want to read if it's about something real or if it's fiction. But if I post on creepypasta, then they're not gonna know it's fiction. I might look up some information and fill in the places where I left off. The little girl talked to her mom, and her mom could probably do some research on sun allergies and symptoms of it and what helps. And then I could put a little bit of that information into my creepypasta story. Thank you for listening.